Welcome to the weekend edition of NYNJPA Weather. I'm your meteorologist, Stephen DiMartino, and it looks like we're going to have some rather warm conditions on the way for the northern mid-Atlantic. Let's take a look at the latest forecast. Here's our surface map as of 8 a.m. this morning, on Friday morning, and you can see high pressure is pretty much in control. Really, we could expect that throughout much of this weekend. We do have a few interesting disturbances that are over central Canada right now. Those disturbances will be moving through the northern mid-Atlantic, but really won't be producing much in the way of precipitation, a few isolated rain and snow showers here and there. But otherwise, a dry and relatively warm weekend on the way, especially compared to what we've seen throughout much of this winter. So basically what we could see is a return to normal, which is basically highs in the 40s. So obviously all this snow that's on the ground is going to finally start to melt. Sure, the ground's going to be a little bit muddy, but the snow is going away, and I don't think it's going to be coming back all that much for the rest of this coming winter. So let's take a look at the latest forecast. This is the European model guidance from the Penn State eWall, an excellent website for all your model needs, and it's free, so I can't beat that. What I have circled here is the ridge that is over the Rockies. This ridge will be moving east, and with it, plenty of warm air. But in the meantime, on Sunday night, you can still see that there's still a trough that is basically from the northern plains off through the New England coast, and that's going to continue to send a series of disturbances through the northern mid-Atlantic. So every so often we'll have variable cloud cover, an isolated shower here and there, but overall most locations will remain dry. And the reason why, well, we could see that at 850 millibars. Note all the oranges over the southeast and much of the southern plains and Mississippi River Valley, Gulf Coast. That's relative humidity, and it's below 30%. Now, when relative humidity is below 50%, which it is over New Jersey and Pennsylvania, it's very difficult to have cloud formation. In fact, most of the times when you are looking for precipitation, you want relative humidities at 850 millibars above 80%. So clearly what we have here is a very dry atmosphere setting up for this weekend. So even though we're going to have disturbances moving around, there really won't be much in the way of moisture in the atmosphere to produce any precipitation. So we're keeping the threat of an isolated shower in the forecast. But really most locations are going to remain dry because the atmosphere is just too dry. When you have relative humidity around 10 to 30% along the Gulf of Mexico, you know that there really isn't going to be much in the way of precipitation throughout much of the eastern United States. And we're going to see that certainly this weekend and through much of next week. Also, I want to point out, at 850 millibars, all of our cold air is locked up in Canada by the time the weekend ends. So while temperatures are going to moderate back to normal, really all that cold air is locked up in Canada, so I don't really expect much in the way of any cool shots over the next several days. In fact, with temperatures returning to 40s and possibly even lower 50s throughout the rest of this week, I would not be surprised if some locations do not fall below freezing for the first time since November. So that's pretty impressive. That's certainly going to allow a lot of the snow that's over the northern Atlantic to melt away. There's still going to be some threat for black ice, but really not much in the way of a major impact as what we've been seeing. And of course on our surface map we have our area low pressure approaching for Sunday night. So again, there's going to be one disturbance on Saturday night into Sunday, a few isolated showers, and then another one on Sunday night into Monday with a couple more isolated showers. But really, as you can see, there really isn't much in the way of precipitation expected with these cold fronts. And in fact, temperatures will again return to near normal levels. A lot of the snow is going to melt. So what about the rest of next week? This is the 500 millibar pattern by Thursday night. And notice we pretty much have a ridge from the Rockies all the way to the East Coast. That orange line up there, that's the warm air that's coming out of the Gulf, swinging through the plains, where it's going to reach the 70s. All that ice is going to melt, and Oklahoma is going to thaw out. And that warm air is going to move through the Ohio Valley and eventually towards the northern Atlantic. Now, obviously, we're not going to be in the 70s anytime soon, but we will return to the 40s and the 50s which is actually going to end up being slightly above normal, something that we haven't seen since October. So we're clearly starting to change into a different pattern here. Also notice the negative NAO pattern is gone. We have basically a zonal flow from the northern plains to the Atlantic, which is a positive NAO pattern. And we also have a very deep trough over the west, bringing some snow to the Rockies, but also allowing plenty of warm air to pump up into the plains and throughout much of the East Coast. So clearly this is a very warm pattern setting up. Not only is it a warm pattern, but it's also a dry one at that. With the storm track focused more towards the north, towards the St. Lawrence River Valley, that means that much of the northern Mid-Atlantic will remain high and dry. In fact, note that over New Jersey by Thursday evening, relative humidity is around 30 to 10% at 850 millibars. That's basically clear skies. One thing I do want to point out, though, is that with the snow melting and with the warm air moving over what is relatively a colder boundary layer, there will be times where you'll see some patchy fog, especially in the morning, and also some variable cloud cover until all this snow is melted away. So even though the model guidance is showing a very dry atmosphere, clearly we're not going to be under any threat of any significant precipitation or even moderate precipitation at that. There will be at times some cloud cover because of all this snow melting off. But for the most part, next week is going to be high and dry and also warm, with temperatures bounding into the lower 50s to possibly even mid 50s. I would not be surprised if Cape May, New Jersey hits 60 degrees by Friday afternoon. So clearly we are in a very nice warm pattern. This pattern will not last forever, but we are clearly stepping towards spring. Much like how we stepped down towards winter in November and early December, we're going to step up towards spring. But as we're stepping up, we'll still have these cold air masses that are sitting up over Canada, occasionally drop south and reintroduce us to some polar air once again, and possibly even one more storm. So winter is not completely over yet, but clearly we are moving out of the winter pattern and more towards the spring pattern over the next several weeks. And finally, at the surface, you can see high pressure is basically anchored over the eastern Gulf of Mexico, and that ridge basically extends out into the Atlantic, and that keeps us into a warm, dry, southwesterly flow from the southern plains up through the Ohio Valley and into the northern Mid-Atlantic. So it's going to be a very quiet week, that is for sure. Quiet, tranquil, and peaceful. Exactly what we need after what's been a very active and cold winter. Thank you for trusting in NYNJPA Weather as your weather source for the northern Mid-Atlantic. I'm your meteorologist, Stephen DiMartino. Have an excellent weekend out there and enjoy the warmer temperatures.